What's happening, people? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown here, and welcome to the official aftermath here between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. We're literally going to bring the podcast a day forward because we thought let's just capture the moment. You know, we've had a day's rest. You know, we've had time to sleep on it. If some of you guys did go to sleep, obviously it was really early in the morning, but we've had some time to process what happened last night, and it was just unbelievable, right? I mean, we've got a lot to discuss today. So before I get started, I just want to shout out my dad, obviously on the stream. Big up yourself, and of course everybody that will join during or throughout the stream, leaving comments or who will watch it at a later time. So yeah, big up to all you guys. I did do a post-fight reaction straight after the fight. If you haven't seen that, check it out. But we're gonna touch on, you know, just a little bit more, man. Like I said, we're gonna reflect on, you know, last night's events, what happened, what might be next for both fighters, and we'll go from there. So, Laurie, I'll let you kick off. You know, I'll let you share your thoughts first of all as to how the fight went for you. You know, just your general thoughts overall about the outcome and the way how it happened.
First up, listen, man, big up yourself, big up to everybody watching, tuning in around the world. Thanks for your support, really appreciate it. Secondly, what a night. In fact, what a week for boxing this has been. This has been unbelievable week of boxing, man. Two massive fights. Two fights where some people have suggested to me, because of the one-sided nature of both fights, did you find it slightly anticlimactic? And I can understand where people are coming from when they say that. But on the other hand, if you're a fan of the sport, a fan of boxing, then you will realize, and this is what I've tried to explain to some of my friends who are not, shall we say, boxing diehards, they're more on the casual spectrum of things. I've tried to explain it to them like this. In both of those fights, what you saw are the victors displaying greatness. You're talking about both of those guys showing generational talent that you'll be talking about for years and years to come. The Inoue fight, you know, I'll call it a fight, but let's face it, it was a very one-sided dominant performance, was an example of that, where Inoue was up against a very good fighter, but he just showed himself to be another level. The way he rose to the occasion, the way he dominated Fulton, it doesn't mean that Fulton is a bad fighter. What it means is that Inoue is a great, great fighter. Likewise, like last night, likewise, bit more surprising, if I'm being honest, because I honestly thought that this fight here would be hotly contested. I had it to Crawford 1-1-5, 1-1-3 before the fight, but I did say to you that I could also see a pathway for Errol Spence to win. I'd sort of studied all the details before the fight, watched fights. I've obviously been watching these guys for years. I've been fans of theirs for years, but I even watched some of their fights in the lead up to yesterday. In order that I could give myself what I thought was a justifiable prediction. But I've got to say, man, apart from the first round, where you could make a case for edging that to Spence, I think it was fairly even. They traded jabs, and I think right at the end of the round, Spence landed a decent overhand, would be left because he's southpaw, that appeared to catch Crawford, or if not catch him fully, kind of, you know, some partially caught him. And the fact that Spence was actually coming forward at that point, I thought, could give that round to Spence, but, you know, let's see what happens. It wasn't as if Crawford was hurt or unduly perturbed. It was a fairly even round. But then come the second round, man, now, I noticed straight away that Crawford had already downloaded the information. And he looked far more confident in the second round. And he was already started to come forward. And then you saw Daryl halfway through, was it? The round, he landed that shot, the counter shot. Errol Spence down for the first time in his career. And from then onwards, bro, it was pretty much one-way traffic. And in a way that I never, ever thought I would see. He just got totally dominated. He couldn't do anything with this guy. Crawford was just on another level. He was simply on another level. He outboxed, he beat him up, dropped him, and then stopped him. And okay, the fight ended in round 9, but by round 7, I was already shouting out at the live stream that Derek Strames should just call time on the fight. Totally one-sided, dominant performance by a generational great fighter in Terence Crawford.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, as I said, many people will know, going into this fight right here, I was, it meant a lot for me on a personal level because of how much I love both of these two fighters. I've been made no secret about saying it that both of them are my current favorite fighters today. So I was always going to have mixed feelings with the outcome because, it'd be difficult to see one of them lose, but at the same time, I'd be overjoyed with the victory. And that's pretty much how I felt, after this fight here. I was just overjoyed and proud and happy for Terence Crawford. He's been waiting for this opportunity for so long. He's had his standout moment on the big stage and he delivered emphatically. He's now finally getting the plaudits I think he deserves. On the other hand, it was quite sad for me to see Errol Spence get beaten and taken down like that because it wasn't just a defeat, it was an absolute beating and one that he might not fully come back from. He's been through a lot already with the car crash, the damaged eye, and now this, right? So yeah, mixed feelings for me, but the performance itself from Terence Crawford was just unbelievable. One of the best performances I've ever seen, and I've been been watching boxing for a long time now. I've seen some brilliant performances in the past. I've seen the likes of Mayweather Corrales, Mayweather against Gatti. I've seen Bernard Hopkins against Felix Trinidad. Winky Wright against Sheamus. I've seen those type of fights before. But Crawford's fight was right up there in terms of one of the best that I've ever seen.
Yeah, for a fight of this magnitude, and for a fight where coming into this fight, a lot of people, let's face it, a lot of people would make Crawford favourite. And I get the reasons why. We a lot of us said it, including myself, is that with Crawford, he has more ways to win than Spence. He is the better boxer and the better athlete. However, Errol Spence did bring a lot of attributes to the table. But the way in which Crawford beat him, man, he just beat him in every way. And I'll be honest with you, man, he didn't really get out of what I would call second or third gear to do it. And I would also say this, right, that towards the end of the fight, I think there was one round where you actually saw Crawford tap Spence's glove at the end of one of the rounds. Could have been the 6th or the 7th.
After the 2
and it kind of seemed to me that Crawford, who, let's face it, can be a nasty dude in there when he's ready. I wouldn't say he carried Errol Spence, but I think he showed him a bit of mercy, man. I actually do. I think he was that one-sided. I think he actually respects Errol Spence. Don't get me wrong. He's a competitor, so he was more than happy to get Errol Spence out of there. But he didn't go hell for leather when he could have done. And I'm suspecting that it may be because he showed a little bit of mercy to Errol Spence. Now, that's just my take on it. You know what I mean?
So
it's one-sided.
Where did it all go wrong then? Let's try and unpick it here because going into the fight, you specifically said, I also acknowledged it as well, but I remember you saying on the show that if Crawford is able to back up Spence, then the fight is over. And that's pretty much what happened after the second round. So what happened? What went wrong for Errol Spence, first of all? Because there are going to be people out there, I've seen it already, those that have said he looked weight drained, he didn't look himself. He was forcing a lot of his work. A lot of his work looked a bit desperate. I don't want to take nothing away from Terence Crawford whatsoever, but what exactly went wrong for Errol Spence? And big up to everybody in the chat. I see you, Harvey. I see you, Yemi, Francisco. Shout out to everybody in here, man. Unbiased TV, Ian. But yeah, what went wrong for Spence, do you think, in your opinion?
I'll tell you what went wrong for Spence. He was in there with the pound for pound greatest boxer and most talented fighter of his generation. And Terence Crawford was on his A game and didn't let Errol Spence really get into the fight after that first round, which, like I said, was more or less a feel-out round. He dominated him, man. It's as simple as that. He excelled. He took Errol Spence's jab away. We spoke before the fight. We said that if Errol Spence was to do anything in this fight, a bit like Fulton against Inoue, he was going to have to be on the front foot. He was going to have to be the one trying to push Terence Crawford back. And in the first round, you saw Errol Spence come out and he was trying to do exactly that. In fact, for the majority of the first round, he was kind of on the front foot, not pushing Crawford back, because Crawford, you could see that he was having a look, using his feet, you know what I mean, downloading the information. But once things got down to work, so to speak, in the second round, you could see that already Crawford was inching forward. He kind of felt Spence's punches and thought, you know what, I'm okay, man. You know what I mean? You can see he had that look on his face to say, right, let's get down to work. And once he'd established that, man, his counter punching, his footwork, foot placement, sharpness, power, everything was just on point. And it was comfortable for him. And Errol Spence, I'm going to say this, yeah, like a lot of people are saying this, Errol didn't look the same. Is it the car crash? I'm not going to have that, man. At the end of the day, it was because he was in there with Terence Crawford. Because previous to this fight, Errol Spence had turned in what I thought against Ugas was one of his best performances. And you have to remember that was Ugas coming off the back of a very good win himself. And a lot of people out there were suggesting that Ugas would give Errol Spence problems. They weren't necessarily saying he was going to win, but a lot of people saying it was going to be a hard fight. And he beat Ugas up and stopped him quite conclusively in what was a pretty impressive performance. That was also at 147. Now, that was 18 months ago, was it? So in that time, maybe the weight factor, it's possible, could play more into it in terms of diminishing him as a fighter. But I tend to not want to do that, man. I think we have to give Crawford the credit, you know what I mean? Me and you spoke earlier today, Darryl, and you were saying about that video that we all saw from years back when they met. Remember before? Crawford was saying to him, and I think that clip's gone viral now, with Crawford saying, when I beat you, and don't forget, this was what, 4 or 5 years ago?
2018.
Yeah, 2018. So yeah, that's nearly 5 years ago. When I beat you, people are going to say that, you know what I mean, you were weight drained and blah, blah, blah. And Spence was saying, when I beat you, people are going to say you were too little. So, listen, man, it was a totally dominant performance. And to me, Errol Spence did his best. He hung in there. He showed bravery, showed courage, he showed heart. He even tried to change tactics a couple of times. But the guy was just too good for him. And sometimes in sports, man, I was saying this to a friend of mine this morning. Sometimes in sports, you have to hold your hands up and say that you were just in against a better guy. We've seen it in football, you know what I mean, with Messi and people like that, and Mbappe and the great players. You see it in tennis when guys come up against Djokovic when he's on an inspired day. You see it in cricket. You see it in many, many sports. You also see it in boxing. And that's what we saw last night. A generational
I thought Terence Crawford, man, I thought with him, he just, the way how he approached this fight, first of all, and I'll do some comparisons with how I looked at him and Spence's body language looked. Spence obviously looked very relaxed heading into the arena, almost looked like he was half asleep on the way to the arena. But I know that tends to be his.
That's his. I've heard people say that as well.
But with Terence Crawford now, he just had a cold-blooded, sharp focus from the beginning, man. He was rapping. He tends to rap his own hands anyway, but just the way his approach, walking to the ring. You know, some people may have looked at it as he looked a bit nervous, but there was just a different energy I felt between the two fighters all the way up until the first bell. And Crawford just looked a lot more composed for me. You know, he didn't look jittery. He just literally stood his ground, looked the more powerful guy in there. Even just on the eye, he just looked physically bigger and stronger than Errol Spence in there, which was one of the reasons why some people thought Spence might win, was down to the physicality. But Crawford took that away pretty much from the offset. And when he started backing him up, it was over. But the punching power, the accuracy, the clinical precision, cold-blooded, brutal work that Crawford displayed yesterday was just way too much for Spence, man. And I didn't think I'd see it. I was worried that Spence might walk into something, but the precision and accuracy that Crawford was landing on Spence throughout was just quite frightening.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, accuracy and precision and speed is power, really, isn't it? Because you don't have to be the biggest puncher in the world, but if your punches are accurate, they're on point, they're precise, and they're delivered with speed, then that generates power in itself. I mean, there was it 3 or 4 knockdowns? And then 3 knockdowns. And let's not forget, there were multiple times in there where he wobbled Errol, you know what I mean, with single shots like jabs. He put him down with a jab. Listen, man, I can't speak highly enough of that performance. That was a performance of a great, great fighter. You see certain performances from certain fighters and it kind of etches in your memory. And that was one of them. A bit like what you were saying with, I remember I remember that clearly when Floyd fought Gatti. And again, I remember that fight. That was a junior welterweight fight, but I think it was about 2005. I remember Gatti was coming off some good form, and a lot of people had Floyd favourite, but there was also a lot of people saying, "Listen, man, Gatti, tough guy, can punch, bigger man," and Floyd absolutely destroyed him. And it was kind of reminiscent of what we saw last night. You
It
know what I
really
mean?
was. Yeah, it really was. And yeah, I just thought that there was a unsteadiness with Errol Spence. His legs didn't look that strong. But I'm not gonna take anything away from. I think Crawford delivered a performance for the ages, man, and it was just punch perfect. You know, I heard
It
it.
was.
You know, you hear the oohs and the ahs from the crowd. Like I just heard that all night, man. The shots were the frightening accuracy. The head was snapping back of Errol Spence, and I know that he's been caught before. Like, and he made no secret of his plan to really take it to Crawford that night. He did, and he really paid for it, man. I mean, his face was busted up from
Yes.
pretty much the third round onwards. And I'll be honest with you right now, after that knockdown in the second round, I knew it was over. I
Yeah,
knew it
yeah,
was over.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
a matter of time.
Because number
From the
one as
fourth
well,
round,
that punch was like in what they call an equilibrium shot. It's difficult to recover from those because of what it does, the sensation it does to your legs. And by the time you get your legs back, a lot of the time the fight is pretty much over. Um, yeah, it's kind of difficult to find superlatives for that performance because he was just so good, and that is why now you go online and I knew this would happen, and it's kind of regrettable, but you know it happens. People are now trashing Spence. Oh, he weren't that good. I told you he was overrated. Yeah, he's never been the same since the car crash. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? All that type of stuff, man. Like, come on now, bro. Like, it's interesting as well because Shane, big up Shane Willoughby, who's out there, our friend Shane. We spoke to him yesterday, and Shane obviously was one of those like myself and you that thought this was going to be a close fight. He actually went for Errol Spence to win, and he sent me some footage, and he was so gassed, man. He was so excited. The man was shouting at the top of his voice. He goes, "I can't believe what I've just witnessed," and he won't mind me saying this. It takes me back to a conversation that I had with Shane in the early hours of yesterday, right? I got up, and not long after I got up, Shane rang me from his hotel room. I think he couldn't sleep, you know what I mean? And he was talking to me about the fight. And we were talking about Inoue as well. And he was saying, right, Inoue, pound for pound number one. I don't care what happens tonight. I said, Shane, how could you say that, bro? With respect to Inoue, who delivered a great performance in the middle of the week against Fulton, you've got tonight Spence versus Crawford, number 3 and 4, I think they were rated in the pound for pound rankings. If one or the other, this is what I was saying to Shane, delivers a conclusive, impressive performance tonight, surely they got to be in the shake-up. No, after what Inoue did to Fulton, man, 4-weight world champion, blah, blah, blah. And we was going back and forth for a while. I said, listen, Shane, okay, let's leave it for now. Let's just see what happens after tonight. Because I'm telling you now, if one or the other of these guys produce a scintillating performance, you're going to have to think about changing your mind. No. Well, after last night, Shane texts me, Laurie, you were right. Crawford, pound for pound, number one, without any shadow of a doubt. And that's what I think. That performance last night wasn't just a great performance, it was a statement win.
I thought it was crazy that people were doing that after the Inoue fight, to be honest, man. I was like, yo, do you not realize that we've got another huge fight the weekend?
Exactly.
I get that people tend to, and I've done it before, you know, you can be a prisoner of the moment sometimes, but I just knew, I was like, nah, hold on a minute. Let's just wait. Like, we can't crown Inoue, right? It's not fair on him when you've got a huge fight at the weekend that could potentially overshadow, or not overshadow, but also match what you did. And I think with Terence Crawford, the way how he defeated, you know, another pound for pound elite level fighter, the way how he did, I think it's almost impossible now, for me anyway, to rank Inoue above Crawford. I mean, some people
Yeah.
still will, but I think the majority of people on Twitter are now realizing that they might have jumped the gun a bit and, crowned Inoue before that fight. So, listen, for me, Inoue was fantastic, not taking anything away. That was a brilliant performance, and he deserves his flowers as well. I think that the top 3 pound for pound is clear with Crawford, Inoue, and Usyk. I think that is the clear top 3 for me, and most people, from what I've seen online. But I think with Crawford's performance, the way how he did it, the fact that he's now a two-weight undisputed champion, not just a two-weight champion, he's a two-weight undisputed champion, a three-weight
First man
champion.
to ever do it.
Yeah, first man to do it as well.
So he's created history as well.
100% knockout streak at welterweight, and these are no scrubs that he's knocking out. He's knocking out serious dudes. You've got to have Crawford at number one for me.
I would go further than that as well, right? I'm going to say this, and I know I suggested it to you off air, and we've had a conversation about it. And indeed, I've gone online and I've seen various people putting it out there. I've seen Carl Frampton make some comments on it. I would go as far as to say that Crawford needs to be in the shake-up with the best fighters of the generation or just gone. So, for example, I'm looking at Crawford at welterweight and I'm looking at Floyd and I'm thinking, you know what? There is argument to say that Crawford is a better welterweight, not maybe a better fighter, but as a welterweight, he's better than Floyd. And, you know, because if you look at what he's doing, okay, you can argue that Floyd, some of the fighters he's beaten. So Crawford still has a way to go, but it's certainly worthy of discussion now. I know these things are hypothetical and they're subjective, but his performance yesterday was that good that's how I'm speaking about this guy now, in rarefied atmosphere, as like, I'm not even like looking at his contemporaries at the moment. I'm looking at the guys who came before him and say, listen, man, he's in that type of company. Floyd, Sugar Ray Leonard, Hagler, all them. And some people might say, oh, come on, you're overstating it. No, I'm not, bro. Like, the man's created history. Like you said, Daryl, 2 weights, undisputed world champion, and in the so-called biggest fight of his night, the fight that, you know what I mean, which would be establishing him as, you know what I mean, kind of this generation's great fighter, he absolutely demolishes an opponent. Then you have to look beyond. And I'll tell you something else as well. I mean, I don't know what, I mean, they're talking about a rematch. I don't really want to see a rematch of this fight. So they need to take it at 154. I mean, politics might dictate that we do see it at 154. Definitely won't be at 147. I don't want to see it at 154.
I don't want to see it.
If Terence Crawford moves up to junior middleweight, I don't see anyone beating him there. Neither. I don't. And I'm just keeping it 100. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jamel Charlo is a very, very good champion, and he's actually on the lower regions of my top 10 pound for pound. Cleaned out the division, only lost once, avenged the loss in devastating fashion, beat Brian Castano. Obviously now he's stepping up to super middleweight to fight Canelo. But he said that he's coming back down after the Canelo fight, regardless win, lose or draw. He comes back down to 154, bro. There's a certain Terence Crawford waiting for him. And come on, man, like skill-wise anyway, you would have to say that Terence Crawford is on another level skill-wise to Jamel Charlo, who is a very good fighter. And yes, I know that people straight away are going to talk about the size. But we also spoke about the size last night. And that didn't matter a jot.
I'm going to get into what's next for both fighters here, but a couple of questions here. So we'll go to Himanshu first of all. He said here, guys, if Usyk dispatches Daniel Dubois, can he become pound for pound number one?
Is he being serious? Or is he winding us up?
Nah, Himanshu's he's legit, bro.
I know he's legit, but is there a touch of sarcasm to that question? Because
listen, Usyk.
What do you mean if Usyk beats Daniel Dubois?
No, Usyk is in the mix for me, though. I think he is. I think some people have disrespected Usyk this week, man. For real, like I think people have forgotten what he's done. You know, he is a.
No, I'm not disrespecting him because I just said he's in my top 3.
Yeah, but
I'm saying, are you seriously suggesting that if he beats Daniel Dubois, he's number 1 pound for pound?
Well, that's his question.
I think he meant to take out the Triple D and put Fury in there, because if he beat Fury, then yes, he can, depending on the manner of the victory, of course. But no, in answer to your question, Himanshu, no, listen, man, I expect Usyk to beat Daniel Dubois, and I expect him to win comfortably as well. I don't think Dubois has a puncher's chance, and obviously he's the younger man. But let's be honest, man, his chances of winning that fight are less than 10%, if you ask me.
Yeah. Question here from Ian Hamilton. He says here, Laurie, simple question. Where does Crawford compare to the likes, I think you briefly answered it, but where does Crawford compare to the likes of Sugar Ray Leonard, Hearns, and Duran, and how would he hang with those three?
I think he's right up there in that conversation, bro. I really do. I really do. I think he's that talented. You've seen it last night. He's a switch hitter. He's accurate. He's good on his feet. He's got good defense. He's got legendary offense. You know what I mean? He's just sharp. He's got everything. He's got heart. He can take a punch. He's right up there with those guys. Trust me.
Yeah. Fix Electronics here says the winner gets to pick the weight, according to the report. So obviously, Terence Crawford would have the option as to whether it happens at 147 or 154. We'll have to see. He says here he's a Philly subscriber. So big up Fix Electronics, man. Good to have you here. WM says here Usyk is easily top 3 pound for pound. So let's get on to what's next for both men. And we'll start off with the potential rematch, right? Because after the fight, Errol Spence did say, and I'm not sure if this was just the machismo in him because he showed tremendous heart throughout that whole fight, man. Afterwards, it's quite natural that he was going to say that he wants the rematch, and he tweeted Terence Crawford afterwards saying that he wanted the rematch. If I was one of his handlers or one of the people close with him, I would, give him a couple of days or so and then, say to him, like, on the sly, like, bro, maybe this ain't the right option for you right now. But what could be next for both men? What do you envision being the pathway for both men? Because for Terence Crawford, he does have the option of going up to 154. He does have the option of rematching Spence. He does have the option of taking on Boots Ennis, who is waiting for him. What does he do?
He's going to take the money option, obviously, because in terms of
35 years old now. Cool.
Yeah,
he's in a couple of weeks.
He's getting on in years, and listen, he's a great fighter, but age is one day going to catch up with him as well, as it does with us all. So I'm sure that'll be in the back of his mind to try and earn as much money, and quite rightly, as he deserves. So that would appear to lean towards a rematch, which I think will take place at 154. Spence has already said, he's not used it as an excuse, but he's already said, and we all know that he struggles to make 147. He's been at 147 since he come out of the amateurs. He fought in the Olympics as a welterweight. That was back in 2012. It's now 2023. It's 11 years ago. He's a 33-year-old man, Spence, going on 34. He needs to move up, that's for sure, especially after what happened yesterday. So the rematch will likely take place at 154.
So
I know they will try and sell it on the back of Errol was weight drained, even though he will probably come out and say, I'm not using that as an excuse. But that'll be the narrative. But I'll be honest with you, man, I'm not really sure if I want to see a rematch. And I'm not sure if that is conducive to Errol Spence's career and indeed long-term health. Because let's be honest, bro, you took a beating yesterday, bro. And when you take beatings like that, a lot of times, man, it can stay with you. They say in boxing, sometimes it's better to suffer a clean knockout, a bit like what Pacquiao did. Remember when Pacquiao got iced by Marquez? A lot of people out there will say that it's better to suffer a clean knockout rather than take a prolonged beating like what Spence did, because obviously the mileage on the clock. So that being said, I personally, if I was in Errol Spence's team, I would probably have him go down another route. But the rematch will do numbers, even though it's going to be a bit of a hard sell, really, isn't it? Because yesterday was one-sided. How do you really sell that, other than the fact that Spence is weight drained? People go, that's like, even if you weren't weight drained, man, it wasn't competitive. So, you know what I mean? Like, when a guy is weight drained and it affects him, it normally affects him in the later rounds where they say, oh, he ran out of gas or whatever. But this is one-sided from the get-go.
I look back at Fury, because one example is Fury Wilder, right? I mean, after that second fight, Fury won that he dominated Wilder, stopped him, and he battered him throughout. The third fight, at the time when it was announced, everybody was like, oh, why we got this? But I think the difference with that compared to this, for example, would be the fact that there was controversy around that second fight. Not with, many people didn't believe it, but there was, people did put that in the air that there could be some sort of controversy after that fight, which helped sell it. But with this, there was just nothing. It was just total dominance from start to finish. Maybe they might use the weight as a reason to try and sell that. But I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm hoping that the rematch clause doesn't get activated. And
To
maybe
be
Errol
fair though,
Spence.
with the Wilder fight, if I remember rightly, it wasn't just. You are right about the excuses that were being put forward. Which at the time, let's be honest, some of us did think, you may have a point. You know what I mean? Like, not that I'm talking about the robe and stuff like that, but some of the other stuff he was talking about, the gloves, and there was a lot of people coming out and saying, listen, man, it looks like there was clear evidence that there was some kind of shenanigans going on with the gloves. I'm not saying it was deliberate or what, but taking that aside, but I think one of the reasons why people were a little more intrigued for them to have a rematch was because in the first fight, if you remember, Wilder had nearly knocked Fury out. In fact, a lot of people think that he did knock him out because Fury was actually on the floor for 10 plus seconds. So a lot of people say, listen, man, okay, Fury, in terms of points, should have won the fight. But then you could look at it and say that Wilder should have had a KO win. And then with Wilder and Fury, there was always that dynamic there that Wilder could knock him out, if you see what I mean.
Mm.
So because he floored Fury a couple of times, one of them really badly. But with this fight last night, at no point did Errol Spence hurt or even begin to hurt Crawford. So there isn't even that to say, well, he's got a puncher's chance. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's going to be a difficult sell, to be honest with you, because yes, Errol Spence is still a name, and they'll sell the fight off the back that he was weight drained at 147. But a lot of the fans out there will just say, well, yeah, okay, maybe he is suited to 154, but how much of a difference is it really going to make? In fact, what I'm saying is it a credible sell? I'm not so sure.
Not for me, and definitely not so soon if he was to have that in December like he was hoping for. But the problem with for Errol Spence is that even if he moves up to 154, who do you fight up there? Because you've got some dangerous opponents up there where you don't have the size advantage anymore. They can crack and they can see that your aura has been broken a little bit. You've got the likes of a Brian Castano. You've got a Erickson Lubin. You've got a Sebastian Fundora. Not household names in particular, and I'm not even bringing up Sue or Charlo. He probably won't ever fight Charlo, but Tim Sue as well. These are not household names really outside of the hardcore boxing world, but they're all seriously dangerous fighters who can crack. So even if he moves up to 154, that's dangerous territory. Who does he fight up that way? So I don't know, man. For me personally, I'll say this. I'll say this. What I would, if I was managing Errol Spence, I would try and get Keith Thurman up to 154 because that's a fight that's been bubbling up for a while. You were chasing him when you were younger, didn't get him when Thurman was in his prime. Then Thurman was supposed to fight you in between this Crawford fight. That didn't happen. Thurman's been inactive himself. He's lost a bit of a step as well. He's hinted at moving up as well. So if he could get the likes, and I'm just literally just thinking at the top of my head, this is nothing that's like on the verge of happening or anything, but if I was Spence's handlers, I would try and do that because I don't know who he fights at 154 as like a tune-up or someone that would motivate him at this stage that wouldn't present a serious risk.
They are going to have to be so careful with this next phase of Errol Spence's career. I mean, if they go for the money, they're going to go with the rematch, which I personally think would be a mistake. I think that they need to build him back up again. The problem with that, though, is that he's 33 years old, and formerly, anyway, he was this sort of unbeaten fighter that everybody considered was amongst the top fighters in the game. Let's be honest, he was. After last night, now that situation is. You know what boxing's like, man? It's brutal like that. I said to you, I've seen online a lot of the same people, that were bigging up Errol Spence and saying, giving him all the attributes. They're now downgrading him and saying, "Oh, I didn't think he was that good. He got exposed." I mean, like, come on now, you know what I mean? So it's a brutal, brutal sport, and they are going to have to be so careful with the next phase of his career because I don't think that the Terence Crawford fight is a good fight for him, even at 154. Like you said, Dara, you go into 154, it's not like you can just walk into that division the way the guys are going to be bigger, stronger, and start calling out the top guys of that division. I mean, for example, I wouldn't like to see him in with a Tim Tszyu or a Castano at this time. Don't forget, Castano beat Errol Spence in the amateurs.
Yeah, so fixed electronic saying right here.
Yeah, so You wouldn't want that one for him. Yeah, I think Furman kind of makes sense. He's another PBC fighter. Furman is getting on in years a little bit as well. He's not looked great. He's not fought for a while. And them two guys have got history. Actually, Spence said at one time that he would never fight Thurman. But then you now hear this in boxing all the time. But I think as throwing names out there, yeah, that's probably because he needs to fight somebody with a name in it. He's not going to fight a no. But at the same time, they need to be so careful. The problem with Furman is that Furman can punch a little bit. And Furman is quick. And on his day, man, that could be a very dangerous fight because when you get beaten up like he did yesterday, man, psychologically, that must do a lot of damage to both your aura and to your confidence. And let's face it, it was a debilitating loss physically. He was getting cracked in there, man. His legs were wobbling down.
Hard. They were really solid shots he was taking, man.
Yeah, so I've never heard people question his punch resistance before, but everybody's questioning it now. I mean, and they're talking about the car crash more now, and so I don't know, man. Maybe I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. I think we need to see him in there again, but I do know that this is going to be quite a traumatizing loss for him. He needs to be.
Manchester says, Daryl, could you take my? What question did you send that question again? I'll have a look at it. But with Crawford now, I would say if you could pick one route for him, I already said the 3 potential routes: a Spence rematch, move up to 154, target Jamel, or stay at 147 and fight Boots. What would you like to see on a personal level for Terence Crawford if you had the choice?
I think I'd like to see him go up to 154 and challenge Jamel Charlo. But then Tim Tszю's waiting. Tim Tszyu deserves the opportunity. I don't really want to see the rematch, man, because I think we've seen enough. He clearly established himself as the superior fighter. Even if Errol Spence was to do better next time, it probably means that he would get beaten up for a couple of rounds longer than he did last night. So it's not going to change because I didn't see any evidence in that fight to suggest it would be anything different the next time they fought. All it means is that Errol moving up to 154 might be a bit sturdier, so might be able to withstand a bit more punishment. But that's not what you want to see, is it? Come on.
No.
Superiority has already been established. So I would like to see Terence Crawford move up to 154 now. Because listen, he's cleaned out the division.
Well, he hasn't.
Yes, you got Boots on the horizon, but I think there's a bigger challenge for him ahead. He's cleaned out the division now, cleaned out light welterweight, step up to junior middleweight. Him and Jamel Charlo have got history. They don't like each other. The fight makes a lot of sense. Jamel Charlo is going to fight Canelo. I think he'll get beaten by Canelo. He said that win, lose or draw, he's not giving up the junior middleweight belts, probably because he knows deep down he's not going to beat Canelo either. And then that fight against Crawford makes a hell of a lot of sense. That's a big sell because now Crawford is not just the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. He's bringing that moniker of pound for pound number one to the table, if you see what I mean. So that helps sell the fight as well. So you've got two fighters on the pound for pound listings.
Yeah.
Crawford and Charlo.
Let's go to some comments here. Ian Hammond says, I remember Ricky Hatton saying that the Floyd defeat was the beginning of his decline. Spence needs some good people around him. As I'm feeling, he'll be hurt. He'll be hurt, man. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to obviously compare myself, but I can tell you this, having boxed myself for a number of years, losing a boxing fight is like no other feeling. Just like winning can put you on such a high, losing can put you on a real low. For Errol Spence, a guy of his status in the game, to get beaten the way he was last night, I could tell you now, right? He's going to be hurting like terrible. So that's why I said that they need this next phase of his career. It needs to be handled with care. Sometimes you have to protect a fighter for his own self, you know. Seriously.
Yeah. Amanchi says here, guys, what's happening with Bivol? Almost 8 months since his last fight. No idea. Ian Hammond says here, it's difficult for Crawford. I wouldn't mind Charlo, but might have to wait for it. Maybe Boots, but there isn't a big list of guys. K22 says here, I'd love to see Bud versus Boots. Two explosive counter punchers. I think Boots would have stopped Errol yesterday too. On that evidence, you'd have to say you're probably right, K22. That version of Errol wouldn't have lasted with Boots either.
Yeah, but you know what?
I know that's hindsight.
Yeah, I don't think that's no. I don't, you see, it's
get
easy
it.
to say that now. You know what I mean?
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I don't really want to go down that route because I think that's kind of disrespectful to Crawford because Crawford, like, up
made
until
Errol look like that.
Hmm?
He made Errol look like that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did because Errol had never shown any signs of looking like that. In fact, Errol was coming off a very good performance against Ugas. Yes, you could argue that Sean Porter gave him a really good fight, but Sean Porter was a top fighter, bro. Like, you know what I mean? A two-time world champion. Sean Porter was, and his style gave Errol Spence a lot of problems. But let's be honest, man, he knocked Sean Porter down, and he won a unanimous decision.
How long does Crawford have left? Do you think? Is a fight with Boots going to motivate him, or is it literally the Charlo fight? Because, like we said, he's 35 going on 36. He was in a massive, huge fight like this now. One thing that I've always said is that, it's really got to be up from here, because do you get demotivated if you're, taking on a young lion like Jerome Boots Ennis, who has got everything to fight for? This is the motivation for him. Whereas Crawford, he's done it. You know what I mean? He's done it twice now in light welterweight and now welterweight, conquered both divisions. Then you're going to take on a young... I remember Andre Ward said something, or was it Lennox Lewis? I think it was Andre Ward, where he was like, if I retire today, they're always going to find someone to throw at me. I think it was Ward. And Crawford could be thinking that as well, to psych himself up for this showdown. He's prepared years for it. He's got an up-and-coming fighter in Boots who hasn't fully established himself yet, but he is very dangerous. At this stage of Crawford's career, does he just look at the Charlos and the big money fights and sail off into the sunset, or does he still have the motivation to take on these? Because it would be a significant challenge in Jerome Boots Ennis, but I guess it's really down to his mindset at this stage.
Well, one thing he definitely won't be doing is sailing off into the sunset, because with a win like that, man, so many doors open up for him. So he'll definitely be fighting on for a few more years to come. And I'll be honest with you, man, I don't see very many people beating him. He's not reached his ceiling yet by any means, because like I said yesterday, he didn't even have to get out of third gear to get that win. So, listen, man, you could still say sky's the limit as far as Crawford's concerned. Now, what I would say is this. I'm looking at that Boots fight and I'm thinking I'd love to see that fight. However, if you're Crawford, does that really make sense? You've just cleaned out the division, right? And let's be honest, in the lead up to this fight, it's now been established that Crawford had problems making welterweight. Apparently missed the weight twice for this fight. So that suggests that at 35 years old now? Yeah. He's been welterweight now for a few years. He's grown into the division and he's suddenly getting to that stage where he's finding it hard to make the weight. You've cleaned out the weight class, beaten your number one contemporary. To me, it makes sense to move up. A lot of great sportsmen always talk about they need to be motivated by challenges in order to get the best out of them. So, you're getting up for those early morning runs and you're slaving yourself away in the gym. And you're doing that because you're chasing that next dream. You know what I mean? And this is where, if you're not motivated, it can catch you out. And this is no disrespect to Boots, because Boots is a great fighter. He's the next generation, if you like. But if you're Crawford, why would you kind of go back on yourself? You cleaned out the division. You beat the guy that beat the guy that beat the guy. Surely you should be looking up now, especially as you're having problems yourself in making welterweight and thinking, you know what? That guy who holds the 154. And don't forget as well, Jamel Charlo holds all the belts. So it's a clean thing, isn't it? You imagine that. You cleaned out junior welterweight. You cleaned out welterweight. And you're possibly now going to get the opportunity to... So you've really made history, but this is history on top of history. Come on, man. It's a no-brainer. You're going to want to go to 154. And then, like I said, him and Jamel Charlo have got history. It's personal between them two in a way that it was never quite personal with Spence, because I got the impression, as did you, Dale, we've spoken about this off air, that you could see that there was a genuine respect and affinity between the two guys. Yes, they were very competitive. Yes, there was some trash talk in the build-up, but I always got the impression with those two guys that there was a level of respect there. But with Charlo, I get the impression, well, more than the impression, that Crawford don't like Charlo and vice versa. They've already had word.
You saw what happened yesterday.
Yesterday, what?
Yeah, in the crowd, like Charlo in the crowd, Crawford.
Oh, I never saw that. I never saw that. Yeah, I saw what happened to his brother.
Well, you didn't see Crawford going up, like when he knocked Errol Spence down in the 7th. He walked over the neutral corner, and he looked over outside at Charlo. Didn't you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. I thought you saw that. So literally, after he knocked Errol Spence down in the 7th round, I think it was the first. He knocked him down twice in that round. Then when he went to the neutral corner, he looked over at Charlo, and he's basically saying, "Yeah, you're next." Like, and then when he won the fight, when Crawford won, he got, you see where he stood up on the rope.
Yeah,
he was talking to Charlo.
I thought he was motioning for them to bring his mum and sister into the ring.
He did do that, but as soon as the ref waved it off, he went over to that corner and motioned at Charlo. So it's building up the ingredients there.
You know what? My mouth is salivating already now that you've said that. Because
I thought you knew that.
No, I didn't know that, man. That's news to me, man. Because I did the live stream, and I did the live stream with the guys. Shout out to the guys on DR Boxing. We had a really, really fun time, man, doing the live stream yesterday. Enough jokes, then, man. There, James Toon and Nick Francis. We had some real fun with it. Yeah, so obviously there's no sound on that commentary we did. So yeah, I was just watching it and commentating from the studio, so I wouldn't have heard and seen all that. But listen, man.
Fix is saying it here. He said, "Yeah, Crawford told him you're next," and he pointed to him. Fix is from Philly, he says here, and he's saying that Boots ain't ready for Crawford. So, and you're from Philly, right, Fix? So he's saying it himself.
Yeah, Boots is an outstanding fighter, man. But come on now, I mean, Boots looked sensational in his last fight. But the guy was kind of tailor-made for him, yeah? If you look at Boots's previous to last fight, where he fought the guy from Russia, I think his name is called Karen something. He didn't look that good. He won. He pretty much won every round. But the guy was a mover, gave him a new look, a different look, and he didn't look anywhere near as good as he did in the last fight when he fought the guy from Colombia. What's the guy's name? Romain, whatever, yeah. And he looked brilliant in that. But let's be honest, man. That guy and Boots and Terence Crawford are completely different leagues. You know what I mean? So,
interesting comment here from Francisco. Big him up every time. He says here, Terry Norris, who I know you're familiar with, had 3 losses before he became champion, including a devastating knockout by Julian Jackson. Terry came back from all that. He was a dog. We'll see if Errol Spence and Stephen Fulton have that kind of resolve.
First up, thanks to Francisco. Big up yourself, my bro. Yeah, that is a very learned comment. And Terry Norris, you know, Daryl, you're my son. That was one of my, in the 90s, man. That was my terrible Terry Norris. What a fighter. I was watching some film of him the other day, man. Oh, man, what a fighter. Unfortunately for Terry Norris, life has not been too good for him since he stopped boxing. He has neurological issues. But what a fighter. But what I would say about it, he did have the losses. He did suffer that defeat to Julian Jackson. But you know what the difference was, Darryl? With that loss to Julian Jackson, it was like a second round KO, clean, by perhaps one of the hardest punches in the history of boxing. The difference between that and what Spence suffered is that Spence suffered a prolonged and sustained beating where he was beat up, battered, bruised, knocked down several times, wobbled several times. And what I'm saying is those type of fights tend to really take it out of you as a fighter, particularly when you're in your 30s and you're sort of, you know, quite advanced in your career. That is not a good look, bro. Very few fighters come back from stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Name me a fighter in recent years that's come back from getting battered like Spence has done and gone on to achieve big things.
Well, we know Errol Spence has got big heart. We know that he's been a champion for a long time. He's at a stage in his career now where he is in his mid-30s or approaching his mid-30s, should I say. He has earned a lot of money. He does seem to be at peace with life right now. He bought his own farm, didn't he? And he's like really seems to be living well, you know. Um, I don't want to. I definitely don't think he will retire. Of course not. But
No, no, he won't.
how much longer do you think he'll carry on for? And I guess he'll be revitalized and remotivated at 154, wouldn't he? Because it's
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he'll move up to 154, and he does that with my blessing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he should retire. I mean, no fighter worth his salt is going to retire off the back of one bad night. What I am saying though, this next phase of his career needs to be managed very, very well, because if they get it wrong, his next fight could be his last. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well,
you said the fight for me, because he does need a high profile name, I would have thought. So Thurman kind of makes sense, because Thurman is kind of in that similar twilight years where he's not been active. He's not looked particularly impressive. He fought Mario Barrios. He couldn't get Mario Barrios out of there. Didn't look that good. But he does have a name. He does need a fight. And crucially, they're both PBC fighters. So that should be an easy fight to make.
Yeah, I like that shout now. I think
congratulate, tap yourself on the back with that one. You should be a matchmaker for PBC, man. By the way, PBC, what a bad week they're having, bro. That's two of their biggest, in fact, their biggest, arguably Gervonta Davis's, but certainly Errol Spence is up there. He just got taken out. Fulton, who was a guy that they placed a lot of stock with, he just got taken out. And of course, Gervonta Davis has not long come out of prison. So it's not looking great for PBC at the moment, man. And they've got quite what I would call a bit of dead wood in this stable, haven't they? Guys that are, it's already clear that it's not really going to happen for them. So,
yeah, interesting times, man. We're going to wrap up within the next 10 minutes. My brother is in the building. DS, good to see you, bro. Ian's got a question for you here. He says here, another one for Laurie. I've compared Crawford as well to Lennox Lewis in terms of professionalism and fundamentals and his finishing instincts. What does Laurie say to that? Plus a strong jab as well.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that too.
Yeah, I think he makes a good point. Certainly in terms of fundamentals, professionalism.
Cold-blooded as well.
Yeah, Lennox Lennox was about that life, man. You know what I mean? But I'd actually say, right, and this is no disrespect to Lennox, he's one of my favourite fighters. I would say that perhaps Crawford is more naturally gifted. I know he's a smaller man, so he's probably lighter on his feet, but the switch hitting, man, and the ring generalship of Crawford is on another level to most fighters.
Well, Crawford didn't even have to switch hit yesterday.
No, he didn't. But he's got that in his house.
We did say that he was going to be Southpaw was the route he should go down, and that's pretty much what he did. I
think Lennox, pound for pound, is the bigger puncher. That right hand by Lennox is like a missile, man. Trust me. That right hand of Lennox's weren't no joke.
Yeah. Fix says here, Spence is still a cash cow. Rare Cockney Governor says, was Spence the favourite? No, Crawford was the favourite. Just. And Fix also says here, Spence versus Virgil Ortiz, Dallas Cowboys Stadium sells. Yeah, well, that's if Virgil Ortiz can get himself back in the ring.
Yeah.
You know? But they're friends, aren't they? You know.
Yeah, from the same area.
I saw he was tweeting last night. He was really, he seemed to be a bit down, man. A bit worried for his friend. You know, he said that the corner should have stopped it a lot earlier, and he didn't want to see it anymore. His friend was getting punished.
No, you know what? He does make a good point, because I was shouting at the screen yesterday saying that either Derek James or the referee should stop. I was more critical of Derek James, to be honest, more than the referee. Because of a fight of that magnitude, the referees 9 times out of 10 are going to try and give the fighter, especially someone like Errol Spence, a chance. Yeah. But I think realistically, after about 4 or 5 rounds, you knew that this was one-way traffic. So when Spence really started to cock punishment, man, Derek James should have been saying to him, listen, man, I'll give you 1 more round. And if you don't show me nothing, I'm pulling you out. You know what I mean? That's what I would have liked to have seen, but it didn't happen. Maybe it even caught Derek James by surprise, because it certainly did me.
Yeah.
I just kept thinking, surely next round, surely next round, he's going to land a shot or he's going to have some success. But what Crawford was very clever in doing last night, and I'm sure you noticed it as well, is that every time Spence had a measure of success, even if it was only a jab, Crawford would immediately take the play away from him by landing 2, 3, 4 shots.
Mm.
As if to say, listen, man, you know what I mean? I got you. You know what I mean? He didn't give him any room, no margins for error. Every time he tried to, and Errol was trying. It weren't like he weren't trying. He was. He just got countered every single time.
DS has said here, would 160 be a better move for Spence than 54? There isn't really a legacy fight at super welterweight, all big paydays, but plenty of killers. Yeah, we touched on that. I fear for him at 160.
Interesting thing, because the middleweight division at the moment, man,
Right,
is
shit.
yeah. I mean, Eris Landy Lara, no disrespect, he's going to fight Danny Garcia. So if you look at your Errol Spence, because don't forget, you know, there was talk in the lead up to this fight that if Errol Spence won, then he was planning to move up and fight Canelo.
Yeah, I mean,
right? No, but I'm just saying, so that would have been at 168. So if he was looking at jumping up to 168, then it might be better for him to go to 160, because that talent is not as deep.
Yeah, but what about the punch resistance, man? He got dropped 3 times.
No, but I guess if you're Errol Spence and his team, they will put forward the argument, and I guess there is some grounds for the argument, that by going up in weight, his punch resistance will be sturdier than it was when you draining weight. Because that's one of the arguments for moving up, because they say that it's a bit like Devin Haney, and not that Devin Haney's been put on the floor or anything, but he says that if he's staying at at lightweight, it's going to diminish his strength and his abilities to take a punch. So he wants to move up to junior welterweight. By the way, that's a really good fight now. I think that's going to happen, isn't it? Him versus Regis Prograis.
Yeah.
It's a great fight.
What's your final thoughts here before we wrap it up, man? Shout out to DS. He said here as well, Spence looked like he was punching through water. He literally had no pop at all, man. Zero. And many people thought that we all looked at him as the bigger man going in. I always thought Crawford was the puncher, but a lot of us thought that Spence did have heavy hands and may be able to trouble Crawford. I remember Sean Porter and who was the other mutual opponent? Kell Brook, basically saying that they thought Spence had heavier hands. So, yeah, the fact that people were saying that and then going in, he didn't even move Crawford, that was a bit concerning.
Yeah, listen, you see why that's why I'm not going to go down the road of diminishing from Crawford's achievements, because people saying now things like that. I get why they're saying it, but I don't think it's pertinent to do that. I think let's give credit to Crawford, because nobody was saying that Errol was any of these things before the fight, or very, very few. I didn't see anybody that say, no, this is going to be easy for Crawford. Unless they were the most rabid Crawford fan. You know, sometimes you get fanboys. Yeah, he's going to knock him out. They don't really believe it. They're just saying it because they're fans. And then when it does happen, see, I told you. Nah. Most people online, neutral observers, pundits, whatever you want to call them, everybody was predicting a close competitive fight. A lot of people went for Crawford. I mean, I went for Crawford. You went for Crawford. But no way did any of us see this coming. So that being said, a bit like the Inoue Fulton, you have to give credit to the guy that won. And like I said, with Inoue, I said it after I saw him fight the other day. Generational talent, great fighter, proved it. With Crawford, I knew he was a great fighter. After last night, he stepped up a couple more levels than even I thought he had. He is a generational talent. Like I said, you could easily put him up alongside Floyd, Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, any of those guys you care to name. He's up there for me. So that being said, I'm not going to suddenly say, yeah, Spence is not very good. He shot this. No, because you're diminishing what Crawford's done. So that's what I take from it, man. It was a great, great performance from a great, great fighter. And I'm lucky to have him around. Let's enjoy him while he's here.
Let's enjoy him while he was here. It was a fantastic performance from Terence Crawford. One that will be etched in the history books for sure. I've seen nothing but praise heaped on him from his fellow peers in the game, which was good to see. But listen, we're going to lock it off here, man. We've reached an hour. So I want to shout out to everybody in the chat. Thank you all for dropping your comments and being here. Thank you all for being here throughout the whole week, because we've done a lot of content, man, over this last week, and I felt the love from everybody, man. So shout out to you guys. Very good week for boxing, a huge week for boxing, man, and one that we've got conclusive endings to both, which we did want. We did want that conclusive endings to both fights. No real controversy in those. So yeah, fantastic week. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. We'll see you guys very soon.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks to everybody for watching and supporting the show. Like, share, subscribe, and keep it locked and loaded on the Boxing Lowdown.
Peace out, people. Thank you.